Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino, and we are back here with another Survivor 44 postseason interview. And I'm so excited to have here today with a person that I've been looking forward to talking with, and she's calling in from an exotic locale. Please
Yeah.
welcome in Lauren Harpe. Lauren, how are you?
Hey, Rob. I'm super excited to be here. I'm out here in Hawaii, but I had to, make sure I got this interview done just so you can hear my side of things and my side of the story. So I'm just super excited to share. Super excited to, be talking with you.
Okay, well, you get the award right off the bat for best backdrop for
Yeah.
this interview. Where are you calling us from?
I am calling you from Maui, Hawaii. So I'm kind of just like relaxing at this point. The season is like go, go, go. You have all these watch parties and you're viewing and you're on a high, but you got to get back to your normal life. So this is just kind of like a break before I get back into, my normal day-to-day life.
Yes. Okay. Lauren, how was this whole experience for you now that it's a little bit in the rearview mirror?
Okay. So it has been phenomenal. I think before I started, I would always say like I wanted to go out there and be some type of inspiration to my kids, to my students, and all of that. And I think my edit did me justice when it came to that, right? There was a few parts in the season where you see other perceptions, or you just see like, okay, maybe I'm not a part of the storyline, or I'm not a part of this here, and I didn't see myself as much as I would have liked to. But I think that they did a really great job of editing me and telling my
Yeah.
story, and how it related to everything else.
Well, you had a really good attitude about everything. And so I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit more about some of the things that we didn't get to see from your experience. So,
Yeah.
you talked a little bit on the show about how, you talked to your dad about that you were going to go beyond the show. Nobody thought you were going to be able to do it. But then here you are. How much did you have to apply to be on the show? Was this your first time through?
Yeah, you know what? It was my first time applying. And it's so funny because I'm a new era fan, super fan. I did watch in the past with my dad, like my favorites were like Natalie Anderson or Poverty and all of them, but more of the new era is what I really like started to see, like people who kind of look like me.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply. So I applied, and also let me just take it back a little bit. So at the school I work for, every single year we have a theme of the district, and our theme this year was Survivor. And so they all the schools had tribes. My school had like a banner, Survivor banner. All the buses had Survivor banners. So I was just like, this is a sign. Like, this
Yeah,
is what I need to do. And then I was watching Survivor one night, and Jeff comes on the screen and he's like, apply for Survivor. And I'm like,
it
this
works.
is this is for me. So I applied, and they called me back soon after. And I was just like, if there's a door that opens, I'm gonna walk through it. And I did, and I got on. So,
How are you feeling heading into the game?
ooh, nervous. Okay, because I feel like I knew the game, the new era of the game a lot, but not as much of like old school Survivor,
Yeah.
and like strategy and like how to interact with different people. And I'm really good with building relationships with people. But whenever you throw in, especially with the new era, with all the advantages and this and that and all the twists and the turns, it can be a little bit intimidating, when you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So starting the game, I was like, okay, I've seen these new era players, and the ones who are flashy most often don't win the game. So I saw Erica, she was a little bit under the radar. I saw Marianne, she had a big personality, but still kind of played under the radar. And then Gabler as well. And I was like, so I want to go into the game, kind of be under the radar,
Mhm.
um, and make my way through socially. So I knew I had a really great social game, but I wasn't so sure about myself strategically and then even physically in the challenges. So I prepared for the game. I worked out. Me and my kids would go to the track. We would run. We would do different workouts at home, and then even I learned how to swim. So before I didn't know how to swim before, as you can see on some of the challenges.
Mhm.
I would go to like the local rec center, and even some of my students were on the swim team, and they would be there practicing, and they would see me struggling with my little swim cap on, with my goggles, like trying to learn how to swim. So it was a task, like, but I knew socially I would be great. which I felt like would be an asset, especially with the winners. But on the other hand, I didn't know how I would do, like I said, physically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it didn't seem like that you had any sort of like apprehension about, getting your hands dirty in the game because we saw that like very early on that you were like rigging the rock draw to go to the very first journey. So it seemed like that you were confident enough to like know what you were doing, like, and be being like some inventive gaming strategies.
Yeah, yeah. So, what's funny is before we started the game, that's what I thought. In my interviews, I was like, I'm gonna be under the radar. But then Jeff had a conversation with us, and he was like, "Make big moves, go out there and do it." Like the players who do the best are the ones who make big moves and who come back. So I was like thinking of that in my mind. I was like, Jeff said, "Make big moves." Jeff said, "Make big moves." And inside, I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit of a control freak. So when it was time to go on that journey, I was like, I need it. I need whatever's out there because the other people can't have it. Like this is mine, So we had the rocks. Okay, so it was it was me and Matthew really like picking up rocks, and we had white rocks and there was one gray rock, and I made it a point to pick up the gray rock that was the largest. So the gray rock was the largest of the bunch. So we put them in the bag, and then everybody's like, "Who's gonna draw first? Who's gonna draw first?" And I'm like, I'll draw first. Like no one was stepping forward. So I drew in, I felt for the big rock and I pulled it out. And I feel like everybody knew
Yeah.
that
Okay.
I like rigged it. It wasn't like a surprise, but I also feel like that it spoke a lot to my social game because even when we got now and remind me if I'm going a little bit too ahead, but even when we got to that tribal, you see no one voted for me. So even if they knew that I was being manipulative or whatever, like we still were able to deter the votes to where it wouldn't come to me
But did
anyway.
they know for real, or you just thought that they must have known?
I mean, after the fact, you have conversations with people and they're like, we knew,
Mhm.
whatever. And it was so obvious though. Like, like even it was not like they
Yeah.
did me justice on there. Like they showed me doing such a great job on the TV screen, but I was like, it was cringe in person. Okay. Like I even walked off and I was like, I'm scared. Like it was so stupid, but they made me look like I was just like such a great player there. But I truly think that they knew.
Yeah. Well, you go on the journey and then you get the bank of vote advantage. But
Yeah,
while you're gone, really like all hell breaks loose
yeah,
back at your tribe. I don't know if we really got to see in the show like you getting the download on what had
yeah,
happened while you were gone.
yeah. So when I came back, I told them that I lost my vote.
Yeah.
And then I went to the side and I told Brandon and Maddie that I actually got the bank of vote. So since I told them that information, they shared with me the information about the idol, and about them searching for the idol and finding it. And then there also I learned a little bit about that disconnect between Brandon and Maddie because Maddie was a little bit upset that Brandon didn't keep that between them two. So then that's when she kind of started downplaying Brandon and his game, and tried to put a wedge there between me and him because she could see that we were connecting more.
Yeah.
And well, let me take it to this. When we first got on the beach, the three girls, so myself, Jamie, and Maddie, were together. We were making palm fronds or trying to, and we kind of formed our own alliance there. And we was like, okay, it's going to be us three girls, and we're going to all get a guy to be with or a guy to work with, not be with, work with. And so Maddie got Kane. I linked with Brandon, and Jamie linked with Matthew. And so that was just kind of our way of just gathering information and bringing it back to us three. So whenever Brandon didn't want to work with Maddie, I feel this is just my perception. I feel that she kind of felt some type of way and kind of wanted to put a wedge in between Brandon and I there. So let's see where we're going next with this, Rob.
Well, that it was one of the craziest first tribal councils that
Yeah,
we've seen in a season of Survivor, and
yeah,
you also have the bank of vote advantage.
yeah,
Why did you decide to, with so much going on, why did you
yeah.
decide to do that bank of vote advantage at that first tribal council?
Yeah. So I guess that goes back to our relationships. So whenever it was time for us to decide, the vote was actually Jamie. And everybody was going for Jamie just because she was the caller at that slide puzzle. And we felt like nobody was really listening. So she would be an easier vote to just put out there and just say, okay, we're going to vote Jamie. But then I think it's transferred and went to me. I don't know who put my name out there. I think it was Matthew. And I didn't really have a good relationship with Matthew at all throughout the whole, whole game.
Good.
But
Want to hear more about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they were throwing my name out because during that challenge, you see what happened with Claire and Matthew. And Claire kind of gave that information to Matthew and was like, hey, well, she didn't come back with the locket. What's going on with that? So they threw my name out. And then Maddie, being so strong with, or being so gung-ho for the Girls Alliance, kind of deterred them from voting me, and then deterred them from voting Jamie to kind of protect us. And then also with Brandon, I feel like he protected me as well. So I had like my shield Brandon, and then we had Maddie over here, like everybody trying to protect me, So I was like, okay, well, they're going to protect me. If they're going to be, I guess silly enough to do that, then I'm just going to play it, and because I just went in feeling confident that it wasn't going to be me, just by my relationship with Brandon, my relationship with Maddie, and Jamie had already made it clear that she was going to play that shot in the dark because the votes were on her.
So you felt confident that it wasn't going to be you, but did you have a good sense of how that first tribal council was going to go?
Not like that. I didn't think. I thought it was going to be Brandon. I thought he was going to be the one to go because before we left, that was the vote. The vote was Brandon, and Kane was on Brandon. Maddie was on Brandon. Remember, Maddie and Kane was working very closely together. And then Matthew was worried. I feel like he was worried because his arm, and what happened with his arm. So Matthew turned around in tribal. I don't think they showed it, but he turned around in tribal and asked me, like, what's the vote? And I said, the vote is to vote Brandon. And I don't know if he thought I was lying because I worked closely with Brandon, but that at that point, I'm like, this is the first tribal, like, Brandon can go. So it's just whatever, So the vote was Brandon, and we see it did go that way. But Brandon didn't trust Maddie, so he knocked her out.
Yeah. Okay. So after that, I feel like that there must have been like a lot of drama with this group about what a crazy tribal council, and I feel like we didn't get that in the show.
Yeah, there was coming back. It was just like a lot of uneasiness, especially after tribal. Kane came forward and he was just like, I'm so sorry for voting for you, Brandon, because I guess being two big guys, like they both kind of related to one another. And then Matthew was just like, I'm so sorry I had to do it. So it was just kind of chaotic. Nobody really knew who to trust. And I just had an eerie feeling. It wasn't anything like big, but I just had a really eerie feeling about Matthew. And I was like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I'm not a fan. Okay. So it was chaotic. Nobody really knew who to trust. And then I had my bank of vote, and they didn't really know how to know whether or not to trust me. So we had a lot to do with building our relationships. We did a lot of yoga on the beach to try to form a stronger bond. But we knew that we could have the numbers if we kept winning and kept moving forward. So I think that's what kind of held us together. Just knowing that we couldn't go back to tribal, and if we did, then we would have to go through that again and try to pick and choose who to vote out and who not to.
Did you have a consensus of who you think would have been voted out if that Ratu group before Carson got there? Who would have been voted out?
I would have been gung-ho for Matthew.
Yeah.
I was going for Matthew 1,000% every single time. Like I just didn't trust him. He was like the dad of the group. He was providing for us, and he was getting fish. He was helping make fire. But then he would have relationships with every single person except me. And so I was like, he seems like he's strategizing with everybody else, but he doesn't want to talk to me. And I think because he didn't trust me from the journey to where I kind of, I wasn't trustworthy. So he didn't want to have anything to do with me. So I was like, I'm going to use this to my advantage. It's going to be Matthew regardless. So I would just go around and tell everybody anything I could about Matthew to make sure it was him.
Okay. So that's really interesting. So were you making things up, or you were just like talking to everybody about like, oh, do you see what Matthew's doing
Well, I
now?
would make up scenarios. I would I would make up whatever I could. I'd be like, okay, so because especially like after when we went to the next challenges, like you see, he took the sling off and he
Yeah.
would just be doing, doing his thing, and he like won challenges for us. And I was like, is he really hurt? Like, is
Hmm.
he just doing this for us to like to have sympathy for him? So I would just like make stuff up, or even like be like, when he gets to the merge, he's gonna really get us, or you see how great he is in challenges, just wait till we get to the merge, he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with. So I would just try to think of anything and
Yeah.
just hear people from him.
And we saw in the show, like I know you said you didn't have a lot of conversation with him, though I feel like that we did see like one of the few moments we saw at Ratu was like he was talking to you about, do you see what Kane is doing? Do you see
Ooh.
Kane came back with he came back with a crab? Well, like I thought he was
Oh
looking
yeah.
for firewood. There's no firewood in the tree.
Yeah, so Kane was actually always out there. He was kind of like a Danny. Like Danny was always searching, 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 but Kane was the one on Ratu who was always searching, but not coming back with nothing. you know.
Mhm.
So he would try to, I guess, put us against Kane. But then I also knew like him and Kane had from my perspective, they had probably the best relationship, Matthew and Kane together. And I knew they were working together. So that kind of just made me really eerie of Matthew again, like because I felt that they did have a good relationship. And so why would you be telling me all these things about Kane if you're working with Kane? You
Yeah.
know? So it just made me kind of skeptical about him.
Where did Brandon figure into all of this? Because it seems like that, from the first vote when you're like, he can go.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to the merge, it seems like you have a good relationship with
Right.
Brandon.
Right. So at the very beginning, Brandon was my shield. I was like, I'm going to be working with him. I connect with him. So he's going to shield me. And he did. Even at that first vote, like he deterred it to not be on me. It could have been me. Right. I was the sneakiest. I had manipulated, but then, but I did share that information with him to kind of build that trust. So we did work together all the way up until throughout the whole game. Like that was probably my number one, and him and Jamie throughout the game. So he just worked as a shield the whole time. So if anybody would bring up my name, even post merge, he was very close with Danny, and Danny would always throw out my name. That's another one.
Yeah.
He would always throw out my name. But I feel like Brandon, every single time, Brandon would come back to me and be like, "Hey, Danny's throwing out your name. What are we gonna do?" So he was giving me information from that side as well. So he worked as my shield, my information. Like I would get everything from him.
And we know how close you got with Jamie by the end of the game. Were you that close with Jamie before she got swapped to Soka?
Yeah. So when Maddie left, I kind of went to Jamie and was trying to work with her because we're the two girls, right? So we had to stick together. So I got really close with Jamie. She would be out there cackling with the bats all the time.
What do you mean cackling with the bats?
Man, okay, so there was bats out there, right? And so at nighttime, you would hear the bats like making their little noises. So Jamie would do this laugh. She has this loud cackle, and she was like, ha, ha, ha. And once she did it, the bats would cackle back at her. And then she would do it again.
Wow.
And then they would cackle back. It's like their own communication.
Yeah.
So she kind of had a
Sonar.
relationship with the
Yeah.
bats. Right. She
Yeah.
was like the Wicked Witch of Fiji out there. She was cackling. So it was funny. It was funny, and she brought she built the morale, and I was drawn to that.
Did she tell you at that point in time that she had thought she found the idol?
No, Jamie didn't tell me anything, so I didn't know about that until after Carson.
Okay.
Carson came and told me, so I had no clue. Jamie kept that one a secret.
All right. Well, let's talk about Carson, who comes, because that
Yeah.
and I don't know if they showed this as much as it was the case in real life, that Carson was a very close ally of yours.
Yeah. So I felt very connected with Carson. We talked a lot about like personal matters, religion, different things like that. And I was like, man, like this guy is somebody who I really want to work with. I can trust him. And as we see throughout the game, he was kind of doing that with everybody, but but I trusted him the most, especially when Jamie left. So I knew the numbers that I had. I knew I had Brandon, and I knew I possibly could have had Kane. So if we would have went to tribal, I knew I had to reel in Carson to be another number for me. So it was great to get to know him, and then great to pull him in as a number. And I knew that he also had bonds with Tika, which kind of he downplayed a lot. He'd be like, "It's so chaotic over there. I'm so happy to be here, so chill." And so I was just like, okay, well, he doesn't have anybody, so he can be with us. So it was important for me to pull him in just for a number's sake.
Laura, can you tell us a little bit about Matthew and leaving the game, and how much of it, because we don't really even get to see the reaction of, like, from what we see on the show, it's basically like, hey, all right, Matthew, we're going to take a look at you after this challenge. And then we never see the Ratu reaction to, oh my God, how did you find out that he wasn't coming back to the game?
Right. That was crazy. And it happened just like that. Like, we were leaving the challenge, and Matthew was like, put my hair in a ponytail. I got to go over here. And I was like, okay. So I put his hair in a ponytail, and he went, and we never saw him again. So we were on the beach, and we knew something was going on with his arm. But we didn't know what extent that it was. And he had been getting several checkups, but so we kind of figured that it would be something like that, but we didn't figure that he would be exiting the game. So you know how, like, with Bruce, Jeff came to the island and told them. With us, it wasn't like that. Okay, we were like the stepchild. They just sent a boat and with a note on it that said Matthew is leaving the game.
Yeah,
and we're like, what the?
Because he told Tika, he told Jam and Carolyn. Yeah,
but he didn't come tell us. So I felt kind of betrayed by Jeff there a little bit.
Right.
But we got a note, and for me, as a human, you want to be sad for the person, and you're like, oh my God, like, this is a game that he wanted to play his whole life. You can see that he was such a great player, but I also did not have a relationship with Matthew, and I knew he was going to be a threat. So I was like, yes, thank you, bye. Like, another number gone. So I was. It sounds bad to say, but
I thought you were gonna say the opposite. Like, oh, I thought, like, as a human, I know I really was sad that he left.
I mean, you're playing the game, right?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
and like, he wasn't a number for me, so I'm just like, whatever, like, he's gone. So I was sad for him, but I was happy that he was a threat and that he was gone.
So how would things have changed if he ultimately, because that if he stays in the game, okay, Josh is probably going to get voted out at Tika's tribal council, and now you go into the merge with Josh. Does he become the merge boot like Josh was, where he was sort of the person who wasn't really fitting in with Soka? Do you think, or would Ratu have rallied together? We need his number.
At that point, I think we were so Ratu strong that we probably would have stuck together. Especially going into the merge. But at some point, I think I would have been pushing the Matthew narrative. Just because I knew I just felt how dangerous of a player he could be. But then he also, like, when he told the information. So when we got to the merge, I found out some things that he told to Claire, So I was like, oh, Matthew was kind of giving information away, trying to form those bonds, And then even with Carson, him telling Carson about Jamie and all of these other things. I'm like, okay, Matthew was really forming these strategic bonds with everyone else, and he wasn't forming them with me. So I felt threatened by him. So I would have definitely pushed that narrative to get him out, because I knew he probably would have been stronger with other people on his side. He was really good at forming relationships with people outside of me, but forming relationships with people. And I think he would have been able to manipulate. I would say that Matthew could have been the villain of the season, a great villain, but just like, he could have been the villain of the season. If
he had a lot going on.
Oh yeah. And he was a great player, so definitely, I don't think he would have left at that vote.
Okay. And Brandon, we saw him in the episode go to have the lunch with Danny, and then they're not including Carolyn as much. Did he come back and tell you any? I think there's even a secret scene of what Danny says when he comes back. But what did Brandon tell you all about when he went on the journey?
Yeah, he kept raving about Danny. Like, how much he loved Danny, how much Danny would be an asset to us, how much he would work like we could work with Danny. So it was all about Danny, less of Carolyn, of course, but just raving about how great of a human Danny was, and how he wanted to work with him, how him, myself, and Danny should work together post merge. And so it was really just on a high of Danny. Big fan of him.
So when you all get to the big group and Danny and Brandon have sort of set something up together of like, okay, we should sort of like work together. Where were you in all of this, and like what did you want to see happen when you first got to the beach with everybody for Mergatory?
Yeah, so it was chaotic when we got there. Like there was cameras everywhere, like just everybody trying to talk to everybody trying to form relationships. And the first person I saw was Jamie. And so I run up to Jamie and I'm trying to get as much information as I can from her. And Jamie and I kind of had like a showmance, it wasn't like a Matt and friend.
Okay. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but we would always go to one another and share information. The next person that I talked to a lot actually was Carolyn. And it didn't get shown, but we kind of bonded on just like being moms, and she loves to have that emotional connection, so we bonded with being moms, talking about our kids and things like that. So I thought, like I could work with her as well. So I was just trying to figure out people who I could work with. Jam talked to me about my hair and stuff, didn't realize he was owned a hair salon, so just trying to bond with people that I felt I had something in common with. To get as many numbers on my side as I can. And I also knew that Tika had less of numbers than anyone else. So I was really trying to talk to them, like Jam and Carolyn, to try to reel them in and be with us.
It seems like that when you all first get to the merge, it seems like that, there's a couple times where it seems like that you and Heidi are talking around that point in the game. Was that the start of like a potential relationship because Danny and Brandon were working together?
Yeah. Yeah. So my relationship with Heidi actually started at I don't remember what challenge it was. Matthew was still there and they had the colored blocks that they had to like manipulate. So Heidi and I was on the bench with Claire, and Heidi looks to me and she was like, hey, if we win, who do you want to go on a journey? And I was like, send Jamie. Jamie is aligned with me, so send Jamie. And so then that happened. She sent Jamie at that next, whenever they won, and Jamie went and they all swapped tribes. So that was the start of that. And then I started talking to her a little bit out there, trying to get to know her. And I wanted to work with her. Brandon was working with Danny, and I knew Heidi and Brandon were together. So I was like, okay, Heidi may be someone that I can work with. The downfall of that was whenever they flipped on, I guess this is going forward too, like they flipped and voted Brandon out. So that was the downfall. Even at that next vote, like when Heidi got the advantage and she put my vote on Jam, from me, my perspective, I guess hindsight, looking back at it, I see that was her, or I feel like that was her, like not trying to ruffle feathers with me as well and trying to work with me. So, I mean, there was opportunities where she really did try to work with me. But then after that, on that Brandon vote, I was like, can't trust Heidi because she lied.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Unless there's anything else you want to say about the Josh vote. Because I feel like there's a lot to unpack from the split tribal council.
Yeah, just with the Josh vote, like I mean, this is random, but just like I tried to form a relationship with Josh when he came out there. I was talking to him a lot. I even told him that they were going to vote him. I was like, hey, they're voting you. Like, do you have an idol? And he even told me, he was like, yes, I have an idol. And I was like, okay, well, play your idol tonight. And that blew everything up because then he went to Matt and he went to all these people trying to figure out what was happening, and we still voted him anyway. But that's really the only other thing.
Okay. All right. Well, this is a really big episode with everything that's going on with you and Ratu, where ultimately, it's you and Brandon and Jamie, and you get sent off with Jam Jam and the other Matt. And so, basically the three of you are going to have an opportunity to basically decide which of these two people you want to send home. And we see Jam Jam have like a really open conversation, a heart to heart with you about that Danny is throwing your name out there. So I'd love to hear about, from your perspective, what's going on during that day.
Right. So when we lost, we knew we had numbers, right? We knew it was me, Jamie, Brandon, wherever we wanted, and I had my extra vote. So I was like, whatever we want, we can do at this point. So I knew I had a relationship with Matt from the journey. So I met him on the journey. We talked a lot there, and I was like, I love Matt, like love him. Let me get everybody else's perspective. His Jam, I really didn't know at that point. But I kind of leaned toward more Matt at that time. But then from the information that I got from Jamie, and as you saw in the episode, Jamie tried to connect with Matt, and she was like, hey, you should work with me. And Matt was kind of dismissive of it. So Jamie was just like, I don't think Matt wants to work with us. I tried to work with him on Soka, and he didn't want to. So this is why we should not vote for him. And he's very close with Franny. And I wasn't a fan of showmances. Everybody says that they saw that Matt and Franny were like a thing. But for me, it wasn't like, they weren't like out in the open, like being all lovey-dovey all the time, at the merge. So I could kind of see that they were a thing. But then the thing that really set me off was when we got to merge, Franny tried to get really close with Brandon. And then Matt would go get close with Brandon. But nobody would ever come talk to me. So I'm like, well, they're trying to form an alliance with with Brandon. That's my alliance, like they can't be close with him. So that was another thing where I was like, they're trying to break us apart again. So you gotta go. And there were some moments where we did have conversations, but it was never strategic. It was more so just like, hey, Lauren, how are you? How are your kids? Things like that. But I didn't really feel like a close bond with them. So I was swayed by Jamie telling us about what happened at Soka, and then Franny and Matt trying to form a bond with Brandon there. And I even think that Franny might have thought that Brandon would have been swayed and gone with Matthew at some point at that vote,
Yeah, she mentioned that Matthew and Brandon seemed like that they had just struck up a friendship.
Yeah, and I wasn't having that.
Yeah.
So we had to go with Matthew at that vote.
And what about what Jam was telling you that day? How did that change things for you?
Yeah, so Jam's such a social beast there, So he, at that point, I saw the twinkle in his eye. Yes. Like I saw the feeling, and I think it was genuine. He's pretty genuine and everything, but like you could see him kind of tearing up, really wanting to talk about it and really like feeling some type of way. And he was on the lower end, and I knew he didn't have numbers. So if we saved him, that could have been a bigger number or a number for us because of that save there. And with Matthew, I wasn't so sure, so I was like, the better bet would be to go with Jam, and maybe in the end we can have something a little stronger.
Okay, so you go to the tribal council. Okay, we're gonna vote out Matthew, and we see that Heidi is gonna stand up, and she said, "I get to control a vote tonight." And you say like, "Hey, well, hold on. Everybody knows I've got 2 votes."
Yeah.
Is this 1 vote or 2 votes?
Yeah, and my heart sank just because I didn't want to use it at that moment, but I knew if I would have had if she would have put like my vote on Brandon or a Ratu on a Ratu, then I probably would have had to make it like an equal vote. And then maybe we would have even had to go to rocks at some point, so my heart sank. And I just wanted to get clarification for that.
Yeah.
And she did show, like, she put my vote on Jam, which was easy. It saved my extra vote. And then also it didn't break any bonds between us either.
But we had so many questions that week about what could she do with that control of vote? Like, what would she control your vote again on a tie? Did they give you any other additional information, or basically we saw what the explanation was?
Yeah, you saw what the explanation was. They didn't give us anything else. She literally just stood up and said what she had to say, and then I kind of like rolled my eyes and I went up there. Mm-hmm. But no, they didn't tell us anything else about it. Yeah. I wonder if she could have because she could have, no, because she had to play it at that vote, right?
Yeah, I think she can only use it for that tribal council. I think the thing that is very confusing is that could you then have if she's going to control your, or she's going to control Brandon's vote, could you then, I'm giving the extra vote to Jamie tonight.
I'm pretty sure I could.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I could have at that moment. Yeah.
Gets very
Most
complicated. Okay.
maybe someone in the future can try it. I don't know.
Maybe it's a very unique situation. All right, so then, okay, so Matt goes home,
Yeah.
and then you are all like back together. Now, at this point, is this sort of like the line is drawn in the sand of that? Okay, the Soka versus Ratu is happening now. At this point, like, did you feel like very much like there's been an official like declaration of war at that point?
I don't know about a declaration of war, but we did feel like we had power. And they didn't show, but we had moments where like as soon as we came back from tribal, we were like laughing because we
Hmm.
thought like we thought we were just like rat too strong, nobody could beat us, you know?
Yeah.
So we were feeling pretty confident. At that moment, we felt like we were running things. And I think we could have. But then that next vote took us out. And
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that one.
Good. Let's talk about that because it's such a big point in the game. Because I really do feel like that Ratu, you have numbers, and like your group is like pretty tight here. With you and Brandon and Jamie and Kane, and Kane even says like, hey, if we don't end up like in the final three, like something really went wrong. But things are gonna go wrong.
Things went wrong there. So there's a lot of talk about the idol, right? And Danny playing that idol there. So I don't know I heard in some of the interviews like what the conversations were, but Jam Jam actually came to me, Jamie, and Brandon and told us that Danny was gonna try to take Brandon out with that idol. So we knew Jam Jam shared that information with us. And I think that was because of, we saved him at the
Yeah.
vote before. So he told us that they were gonna vote for Brandon. So we was like, okay, we need to split the vote. Let's split the vote. What are we gonna do? And Brandon was just like, no, I don't think so. Like that's like the decoy, like because he felt he was so close. This is just my perception. I don't want to speak for Brandon, but I think that he thought he was just so close with Danny because remember he came back raving about Danny, saying how great Danny was. He thought that Danny was just doing that as a decoy to like trick everyone else, and that it was really going to be Franny. But so we didn't split the vote. We trusted Brandon and we were just like, whatever. So he actually went to his interview or his confessional and he left. And then right when he left for his confessional was lockdown. So we couldn't talk. And so even with him coming back, like there was no conversation there. We couldn't talk about anything. We couldn't like finalize a plan. It was like we talked about that. He was like, no, I don't think so. Then he left. And that was it. So it's so funny because when we get to the tribal council and then Danny gets up and he plays that idol. So Brandon thought we were, I don't know, it's still in Brandon's mind. He thought we were splitting the vote. So as soon as he gets up and walks, Brandon looks over at me and he's like, he doesn't know what he just did. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we didn't split the vote. So he thought that at that moment, he thought we split the vote. And I was like, nah, man, we didn't do nothing.
Wow.
So, yeah. So then you can see in that next episode, I say, man, we should have split the votes.
Yeah. You do say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the plan. It was just that Brandon was confident about it. And then he left for his confessional and we didn't have any other conversations. And at that point too, I'm just like, it's not me. So
yeah.
I'm trying to make it to the next day.
But if you all split the vote, like I think that changes everything.
Yeah. And I had an extra vote too. So even if I needed to use it like to balance things out, I could have. And if Danny would have went home, man, we would have been dominating, like with our numbers. We would have just been on top.
And not to mention also, Carson, of course, yeah, he's loyal to the Tika 3, but if it's going your way, like he's probably like at some point he's like, all right, well, I'm with Ratu.
Right. And you know what's so crazy? I really thought Carson was with us, like I was like, he's not really with them. They're so dysfunctional. Like Carson's with us regardless. And I truly believe that, and so he was so brilliant at the way he played that, to be, to continue to share information with me as much as he needed to. And even on that vote, you see how he voted Franny on that vote, him and Jam. So that kind of made it seem like, because in we would always say like, they show your trust with your votes, right? Yeah. So they showed us with their votes there, and they tricked us.
Oh, we got so excited to talk about this Brandon vote. We didn't even talk about you winning the individual immunity and beating Danny.
Oh my God. So that was so crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was on a low. Carson was sick, and I was really cool with Carson. And I didn't even realize even there how close Carson and Carolyn was, because it was like me and Carolyn like trying to be with Carson, be his partner, because we had to do like a schoolyard pick. I don't know. Did they show it? They didn't show us picking our partners, but we had to like do.
You had to pick your partner, right? But they I don't think they show us like how you got there.
Yeah. So we had to pick a partner. And so I wanted to be with Carson, because I was like, I'm low right now. I'm not doing well. Like, I know nobody's going to pick me. Let me automatically get Carson so I don't have to be embarrassed about someone not wanting to be my partner, because I had been struggling in challenges. I jumped off the balcony or whatever and didn't do well. I was kind of struggling with all sorts of things. So I didn't have a good record, in my challenges at that point. So I was just like, okay, I want to be with Carson. But Carolyn took that from me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be with Danny. Danny, do you want to be my partner? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we get there, and Danny's really doing everything. Kudos to Danny, because even going through that little net and just whipping around, he was like, Lauren, you got to hold on to the net and move and maneuver. So even though we had our differences, he still wanted to win. And I noticed that he was still in the game there, like he wanted us to do well. So when we get to the next thing, he's digging up everything. He's like, Lauren, you go stand over there and just wait to put that thing in, wait to put the pole inside the hole. And I was like, okay, I don't have to do nothing. Okay. So he's like digging it up. He gets it, and we go. So we work really well together. And at the end, I have a lot of leg strength and endurance. I'm really good with that. So I was just like, I know I'm going to kill it here. And I mean, we got to the point, he tried to throw me off with the fart, but he couldn't do it.
Can I just add that I never got to ask anybody this, but like, was that the real fart that we saw and heard? And yes.
So the fart was loud. Okay. And it had to be loud enough for everybody on the jury bench to hear, because our faces just dropped. Like, it was loud. I don't know if it was as loud as what was on the show, but it was loud enough for everybody to hear. And he like pushed it out.
Pushed it. Yes.
Yeah. So it was pretty loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I had wondered if there was like some Hollywood magic at work.
Yeah. Well, maybe a little for special effect, but I think that it was, he did a great job at
Did that push you to be even more determined to win? As like, this guy, can you believe what he just did?
Yeah, he was trying to throw me off, and he almost did, because it was so unexpected, and I was just like, dude, like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
So it threw me off a little, but I tried to stay focused.
Okay, you stayed focused. You won immunity, and so that was the high point of that day.
Right. Yes, both were the high points. I guess that was Danny's high point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then after Brandon goes home, okay. So then, and because Jam and Carson, they had voted with you all. You felt like, okay, well, like, this is bad, but I still have my extra vote. We're gonna move forward from this.
Right.
So can you just talk about what your experience was following Brandon going home?
I was very, very disappointed. I was disappointed that I lost an alliance member, but I knew that I had to like continue to build those bonds that I did have on the island. So Jam and Carson, they showed us that they were trustworthy, within that vote. So we figured that we could trust them there, So going into the next vote, I was like, okay, I have Jamie, I have Jam, I have Carson, and then potentially Danny and maybe Heidi. So I knew I kind of had those numbers there. So I just tried to continue to build those relationships with them so that the next vote we could possibly, work together there. But we see at the Kane vote, that's when it got kind of chaotic. And that was a true blindside for me, the Kane vote. The first one that I was just like, what the heck is going on?
Okay, so can you talk about what were you expecting to have happen at that vote?
Yeah, so that was pretty crazy. Like, the plan for us was to get Danny out, with Kane, Jamie, and myself, and then even with Carson and jam. And Carolyn was on board. Carolyn didn't really have a good relationship with Danny. So like it seemed like everybody was on board for that. But behind the scenes, they were, talking about getting Kane out. And Kane was very sporadic that day. He was like going to everyone, trying to talk strategy and game. And that was really kind of the first time I saw him like really taking initiative. So I think that could have put him more as a target just because he was like stepping up and like trying to make moves. Even at Tribal, they didn't show it, but he was up walking around, going whispering in everyone's ear at Tribal. But normally what we say is like, if we say a plan, that's what we're going to stick with. So we said Danny, we were going to put Heidi as that pawn kind of on the side, just in case Danny may have had an idol, because he was running around everywhere. He was looking everywhere for things. We didn't know what was out there. And then as you can see, I mean, it was just so chaotic because I was like, I don't know what's out there. So I'm going to give my extra vote to Jamie. And then Jamie gave her idol to Kane. And that was just not knowing, me freaking out there. And then it made Jamie freak out. And then we all were just freaking out. And Kane was freaking out, running all over the place. So it was just like things were out of our control at that point. And we really just, we lost it at that vote.
Yeah. Was there any particular reason that you all felt like, okay, knowledge is power is probably going to be coming up right about now?
Maybe not necessarily knowledge is power, but just like something could be out there.
Yeah.
And I think that was a scare just because there was so much the previous season and the one before, we didn't know. And even with our season, I feel like they didn't have as much, as they did in the previous. So it was just not knowing what was happening. And just to be protective of that, I gave it to Jamie just in case, something would happen.
All right. So then Kane goes out and now, okay, this is now looking not so good for you and Jamie. Right. But when Franny goes on the reward, she takes you with her and that there is, of course, you get to get your letters from home.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a special moment for me to get those letters and just to have that support because I was at such a low point, from coming off the Kane vote, losing Brandon. And I was like, man, like this was perfect to kind of boost me up and make me have that, just inspiration to keep going forward. So that kind of uplifted me, hearing that from my dad and then also receiving letters from my kids, just knowing that they were there for me and they were still supporting me. So going into that, I'm very thankful for Franny for even thinking of bringing me. But then also at that reward, Franny and Carolyn became very close.
Yeah.
And they were having some very intimate conversations, very personal conversations that made me kind of be like, I don't know how I like this. Because you would see Carolyn really working with Jam a lot and Carson a little bit, but then that's when that bond formed, which was scary to me.
Yeah. Did you think that you were next after Kane went home?
Yeah, I thought that I could have been next. And I really didn't know, I really didn't know what to expect there. So it was just up in the air, they were just knocking us out one by one. So at that point I was just low and I didn't know who to trust, what to do. Yeah. So I just didn't know,
Yeah. So you and Jamie, begin to start to bounce back. That the votes are going to be headed towards Franny. And there's a point where, and you and Danny had been like, butting heads, but now you're kind of working together to get out Franny. But there's a moment when you are talking with Carolyn and Franny, and they're telling you like, Danny's being weird. He told Heidi about that. And you were like, oh, maybe we should vote for Heidi tonight.
Yeah. So I didn't trust Heidi from the votes before. Because she would come up and she'd be like, I don't know what's going on. And clearly she knew what was going on with Brandon and with the Kane vote, but she just didn't share that with me or she would lie about it. So I wasn't pro Heidi at that point after the betrayals. So I don't know how it got back to Carolyn, but it got back to Carolyn that Franny was the vote. And Carolyn started freaking out. And she was just like, I can't do this. Like they're trying to vote Franny. What are we going to do? Because even at the reward, we talked about having a girls thing again, me, Franny, and Carolyn, and potentially Heidi. But when Heidi would go off to her confessionals, we would just say it was us three. So since she came with that information and kind of shook things up a little bit. I was like, why would she come and tell that? So let's just put it on Heidi, and so I kind of tried to flip it there to kind of break some bonds too with the Tikas, because Carson and Jam were with me and Jamie as well. So I was like, we need to kind of, since she's working with Franny, let's kind of put a wedge there, to try to shake things up. And it did, but then I guess they truly had a bond to where they still came back together.
All right, so we get Franny out of the game. You get down to the final 7, and now this is going to be the vote where Danny is going to finally go home. And you and Jamie are in this position where you basically have two different sides that you can go with,
Yeah.
and I'd love to get your sense of like where things were from your perspective at that point.
Yeah, so at that point we were working very closely with Jam and Carson. And in my mind, I thought we were a 4, and so I'm like, okay, we're working together. My loyalty is going to be with them. So we get to the point where we're voting, and they vote Danny, and we vote Heidi. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we vote Heidi, and with them going around with us, not me really being paranoid and not knowing, what's out there. I was like, okay, Danny's always searching. He's played something before. He can play something again. So to just ensure our place in the game and that we made it to the next day, we were like, okay, we're going to vote Heidi. I don't trust her anyway. So let's put her up as a pawn so that if either one of them plays something, that at least one of them will go home.
I know you were working closely with Jamie. Did you have a final 3 of who you would have wanted to sit at the end with? Was it Carson?
No, I wouldn't want to sit at the end with Carson. No way.
Yes.
At that point, I wanted it to be Jam, Jamie, and myself, or Carolyn, Jamie, and myself. So that was ideally what I wanted. Just because of that close relationship with Jamie and Jam, or even Carolyn, and knowing my social game, I feel like with the jury that we had there already, that I could probably get a lot of those votes. But most definitely not Carson. Everybody loved Carson. So no, I don't think anybody wanted to be sitting next to him on the final 3.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure after not so much at the Danny vote, but then once Jamie's gonna go, then it becomes clear, Carson and Jammer, they're doing their own thing.
Right. So that's where I lost it. And they didn't show this, but there was moments where I was on the beach crying, like boo-hoo crying, because I knew that was my final day. Especially when we went, it was at the beginning, they would show me trying to like pitch Carson, pitching his name, like saying he's got to go, but then he wins, right? So that was the wrong name to probably pitch. But so that kind of, I guess, put a target on me from Carson because I was pitching his name so much during the day. Then he wins and we come back and Carson's like, I'm voting Lauren. So it was just me against Carson. And I think at that point in my mind, I'm like, the only person I feel like that wouldn't get all those jury votes. I was just so confident in the jury and me. So the only person I felt that I would have a battle against at that moment was Carson. So I knew it had to be either him or myself. And we even had a conversation about that out there. Like, it's going to be one of us. And lo and behold, it was me. I was searching for an idol though. Okay. So I went out and I searched for that idol for like 30 minutes. And especially in this one tree that they had that looked very unique. It was in the middle. And you would think like sometimes I don't know if I can say this, but sometimes like you would walk away and then the camera would pan and then it look back at you and then it would pan back and look back at you. And I was like, it's gotta be in this tree, but that's not the tree that they showed. They showed it in like a little skimpy tree above our heads. And I'm like, we looked in that tree so many times, but unfortunately I didn't find it. But I think that would have been the only way that I would have made it. Even if I would talk to Carson or try to form something with Carson, I don't think I could have swayed him at that point just because of how tight their bonds were.
If you find that idol, okay, and then you're safe at the final 5, now you're in the final 4. Well, what do you think happens?
Man, I think it depends on who wins the challenge. If I win the challenge, I'm not putting myself on fire. Heidi was great for that. But Carolyn, the Sapphire, I already knew that. Jam, we've seen him make it. I didn't know how well Carson would do, but he kept saying he was like a Cub Scout or something. so,
Yeah.
so I didn't know if he could make fire or not very well. And Heidi, I saw her make fire, but I mean, it depends on who would be there, right? So if I would win, I probably wouldn't have put myself in fire, but I can make fire. I don't know if I can make it as fast as everyone else. So that could have broke me too there.
And maybe you couldn't have broken Heidi's record with the fire, but maybe you could have won some ocean.
I could have. I think I possibly could have.
You won 2 challenges already.
I know.
You were getting hot.
Bring me back and we'll test it out.
Yeah. So, all right. After this experience, then, are you open to a return to Fiji?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. I think that it would be a great redemption for me to come back and to play. I don't know how I would play at this moment, and I don't want to say just in case people are watching and they're out there with me.
Okay.
But I most definitely would, and I think I would be way more prepared than I was this time. You know, they say the second time you play, you kind of have an idea, but I would definitely go.
You talked a lot about in that final tribal council that you were at about how, you felt like that you really did get a lot from the experience. And, it really did teach you a lot about, how you were going to be different when you got home. Did you find that to be the case?
Yeah, I did. You know what? And it's so funny that you mentioned that because that's what I teach my kids all the time, to like set goals, and I teach special education. So my kids are not always the best at what they do. And when they compare themselves to other people, they're not always on top. So I tell them to set goals to like make little gains, right? And so even with me going out there, even though I didn't win the big prize, I still made little gains, right? So I won a couple immunity challenges, and even found out a little bit more about myself, saw that I can push myself to the next level, So even though it wasn't a big win, it was still like a part of the little baby steps to get to that big goal of who I want to become. So I think that, man, that was amazing for me to just go out there and to be an example for my students and my children as well.
Yeah, well, you talked about that in the show, that you couldn't wait to have the kids see you put the necklace on. How was that in real life when they did get to see?
So it's so funny because I'm their teacher, right? And I have some kids that were like so pro Miss Harpe regardless. But I had some kids that was like, Miss Harpe, you're not gonna win.
Oh, rude. Yeah.
Yeah, like hard against me the whole time, So whenever I won, they were so surprised, but I have a good relationship with them to where we kind of play like that, but they were so surprised as to how far I made it. And I think they were very, very proud too. And they had shirts, they had buffs, like they would wear their stuff every Wednesday. Like, and even on Wednesdays when they would come through the car rental line, we would have them standing outside with the Survivor music playing. They had palm trees, they had signs, like they were very proud to be in my class and to be supporting me.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That it sounded like it was a lot of fun to go through all of that. So, Laura, what's next for you besides this beautiful vacation?
I know. You know what? Being on Survivor is just go, 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 right? So you're coming back and you're thinking that your life's gonna slow down and everything's going back to normal. But during the season and watching, everything's just so fast paced. So now I'm just kind of coming down from that and just like trying to just get back to normal life, trying to
Good luck.
I know, trying to do like support my kids as a single parent is hard. And even for people that are married, it's hard to have kids and support their goals and support them being like in sports and doing all these activities and extracurricular and also mine at the same time. So I'm trying to learn how to do that simultaneously. And that's difficult.
Yeah.
So right now I'm just kind of coming down, trying to see what realistically I could do next. And then just focusing on my boys. So I don't have any big plans right now.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future we'll see.
Lauren, anything you want to tell people to check out that you're up to?
Just follow me on Instagram, on Threads at the Lauren Harpe.
Oh, Yeah. Are you liking the threads? Yes.
I'm kind of liking the threads. I started off really hard the first couple of days, and then I kind of like
Same. Big
took
same. Yeah.
took some steps back.
Mhm.
But I mean, follow me there, and then they can see what I'm up to.
Okay. All right, Lauren, thank you for making the time to go through this on your vacation, no
Yes,
less. I
in
really
the
appreciate it.
beautiful, beautiful Hawaii. To see a little bit
Yes.
of
What
that out there.
I'm very jealous. But Lauren, thank you for making the time to talk to us and take care. Be sure to check
Thank
out
you.
every all things Survivor, robisawebsite.com. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.